At 3:45 a.m., my camera caught the HOA destroying evidence. I bought 200 acres in Wyoming because I wanted peace. No neighbors telling me what color to paint a gate. No HOA letters taped to my door. Then one morning I found 3 HOA board members blocking the only bridge to my ranch, slapping violation stickers on my windshield, and threatening to call the cops for trespassing. Problem was, they didn't know that bridge legally belonged to me. And by the time they figured it out, half the neighborhood was already turning against them. If you enjoy stories about land rights, quiet revenge, and people finally standing their ground the right way, stick around and subscribe. This one gets a whole lot worse before it gets better. The first time Vanessa Holloway threatened to call the cops on me, she was standing in the middle of my bridge, wearing a cream-colored trench coat and holding a clipboard like it gave her authority over the entire valley. I had owned the Mercer Ranch exactly 43 days. That morning I was driving back from Laramie with feed bags stacked in the bed of my pickup and a cattle auction invoice folded in my jacket pocket. Sunrise had barely cleared the ridge above Coyote Creek. The bridge sat ahead of me like it always had. Old steel rails, cracked concrete, rust stains running down into the creek below. Only this time 3 people were blocking it. A folding table stood across the entrance, with orange cones spread out like a highway checkpoint. Someone had zip-tied a polished aluminum sign directly onto the bridge railing. Silver Creek Ridge HOA authorized vehicles. Only I slowed the truck automatically. A man in a Navy HOA windbreaker lifted a phone and started recording before I even stopped rolling. Another board member crouched beside my front tire, writing something onto a legal pad. Then Vanessa Holloway stepped forward. I recognized her immediately from town gossip alone. Silver Creek Ridge's HOA president, 11 years in charge. The woman who fined retirees over mailbox paint and once threatened a lien against a widow because her grandson parked a fishing boat in the driveway for 2 days. She walked toward my truck without smiling. You can't come through here, she said. Her tone carried the confidence of someone used to never being challenged. I lowered the window halfway. Morning. This road is restricted to authorized community access only. I looked past her at the sign bolted onto the bridge rail. Then I looked at the railing itself, steel-painted county gray, 4 anchor bolts near the west corner. Same rust line I'd seen 6 weeks earlier during closing surveys. Parcel 8823, mine. The man with the phone circled toward my driver's side mirror, filming the truck bed now. "What's your name?" Vanessa asked. "Wade Mercer." Recognition flashed across her face immediately. "Oh," she said. "You're the new ranch owner." "Yes, Mom." Her expression tightened instead of softening. "Well, Mr. Mercer, Silver Creek Ridge has had repeated complaints about unauthorized agricultural traffic using this bridge." I glanced at the feed bags behind me. "Applied agricultural traffic, that would be you." The second board member walked around my truck carrying a tape measure. Vanessa didn't even glance back at him when she spoke. Commercial vehicles aren't permitted on community infrastructure without HOA approval. I almost laughed at that, almost. Instead, I rested my elbow against the door and looked at the bridge again. The bridge sat exactly where the county survey said it sat, 120 feet long, 40 feet wide. Original parcel carved from the old Turner Ranch in 1964, before Silver Creek Ridge even existed. I knew every inch of it, because I'd spent 2 hours staring at the survey maps beside my attorney 6 weeks earlier. Vanessa mistook my silence for hesitation. "You'll need to turn around." "Will I?" "Yes." The man with the tape measure called out. "Truck bed exceeds HOA commercial height limits." He actually sounded proud of himself. Dust rolled across the creek bed beneath the bridge as wind pushed through the cottonwoods lining the water. Somewhere farther out, cattle bawled against a fence line. Vanessa peeled something from her clipboard, an orange sticker. She slapped it directly onto my windshield. Notice of violation, the adhesive squealed across the glass. You are now officially notified, she said. Further unauthorized access will result in fines and possible police intervention. I stared at the sticker for a long second. Then I looked at the sign they'd bolted onto my railing overnight. Not HOA property, my property. The man filming stepped closer. Can you confirm for the record that you're refusing HOA compliance? I looked directly into his phone camera. For the record, I said calmly, I'm trying to drive home. Vanessa folded her arms. This community has rules, Mr. Mercer. You may own land out here, but you don't own this bridge. There it was. The sentence that changed everything. I felt something settle cold and still inside my chest. Not anger exactly. More like the quiet shift that happens when a negotiation ends before the other side realizes it's over. Because I did own the bridge. Every inch of it. And none of these people knew. The smart move would been pulling the deed from my glove compartment right there. Showing them the county plat. Watching the blood drain from Vanessa Holloway's face in the middle of her little roadside performance. But I'd spent 30 years negotiating mineral access and ranch acquisitions across 3 states. And one thing I learned early, the loudest person in the room is usually the least prepared. So I stayed quiet. Vanessa mistook that quiet for weakness too. I'm giving you one opportunity to cooperate voluntarily before I contact the sheriff's department. The man with the phone zoomed tighter on my face. I reached slowly into my shirt pocket. 3 sets of shoulders stiffened immediately. Instead of papers, I pulled out my phone. I took one photograph of the orange violation sticker, one photograph of the aluminum HOA sign attached to the railing, one photograph of the parcel marker near the west side guardrail. Vanessa frowned. Are you recording me? I'm documenting the bridge. This is community property. No, Mom, I said quietly. It isn't. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. Tiny. Barely there, but I saw it. She recovered fast. I'm calling the sheriff. I nodded once toward the phone in her hand. You should. That caught her off guard harder than if I'd argued. The man filming lowered his camera slightly. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. Excuse me? You heard me. Wind rattled the new sign against the railing. I leaned slightly toward the window opening. Before you make that call, I said, I'd recommend checking county parcel records for this bridge first. The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it felt longer. The man with the tape measure stopped writing. The cameraman looked at Vanessa, and for the first time all morning her confidence slipped. Not fear. Vanessa Holloway didn't strike me as someone who scared easily. No, what crossed her face was worse. Confusion. The confusion of somebody hearing a sentence they don't have an immediate answer for. Then the mask snapped back into place. That sounds dangerously close to intimidation. It's called advice. She lifted her phone anyway. I'm contacting law enforcement. I nodded once, shifted the truck into drive, and rolled slowly forward. Nobody moved at first. Then the man with the tape measure jumped sideways. Vanessa stepped back, off the bridge lane at the last second, trench coat whipping in the wind, as my truck crawled past her at 5 miles an hour. I crossed the bridge without another word. In the rearview mirror, the 3 HOA board members stood there frozen beside their folding table and orange cones. Still filming, still holding clipboards, still standing on land that legally belonged to me. The sticker remained on my windshield the entire drive home. I left it there on purpose, because something told me that before this was over, that orange sticker was going to become evidence. And evidence was worth more than anger every single time. I parked beside the barn and shut the truck off. The ranch sat quiet except for the wind pushing through dry grass along the fence line. 1,200 acres of Wyoming dirt, creek water, cattle paths, and old timber fencing stretched out around me. 6 weeks earlier, that silence had felt like peace. Now it felt like a line somebody had crossed. I left the orange sticker exactly where Vanessa Holloway had slapped it. Then I walked inside. The deed folder waited where I'd left it on the kitchen table 3 nights earlier beside a half-empty coffee mug and a county survey tube, thick cream paper. Recorded plats, tax records, parcel maps. Miles Granger believed in paper trails the same way old ranchers believed in rifles. You never reached for one unless you intended to finish the problem. I opened the folder slowly and spread the documents across the table. Parcel 8823 sat near the bottom, 120 feet long, 40 feet wide. Bridge structure and both approaches included. I stared at the black survey lines for a long moment. Silver Creek Ridge existed because of that crossing. School buses used it. Delivery trucks used it. Emergency vehicles used it. Every resident in that subdivision crossed parcel 8823 almost daily, and none of them owned a single inch of it. The bridge had originally belonged to the Turner family ranch back in the 60s before the county built the creek crossing. When the subdivision developer bought land south of Coyote Creek in 1981, he platted his neighborhood boundary right up to the waterline. Not across it, not over it, right to the edge. The bridge parcel stayed attached to the old ranch deed the entire time. Generation after generation simply forgot it existed, until I bought the Mercer Ranch. I leaned back in the chair and rubbed my thumb across the parcel number. Again, the same number stamped into the concrete marker near the bridge rail. The same marker Vanessa had stood beside while threatening to have me removed from my own property. A sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. I looked through the kitchen window. FedEx truck. The driver handed me a certified envelope through the screen door without much interest. Silver Creek Ridge HOA was printed across the return address. That was fast. I carried the envelope back to the kitchen and opened it with my pocket knife. 3 pages, heavy stationery, expensive paper pretending to be legal authority. Notice of community violation. I read every line once without reacting. Then I read it again slower. Violation 1. Unauthorized use of community infrastructure. Violation 2. Operation of commercial agricultural activity on HOA access roads. Violation 3. Failure to comply with Silver Creek Ridge vehicle registration procedures. A fine schedule followed underneath. $500, $1,200, $2,500. Then came the part that actually made me smile. All non-resident vehicles entering Silver Creek Ridge community infrastructure would now require a $75 temporary access permit issued directly through the HOA office. A $75 fee to drive across my bridge. I set the papers down carefully. Vanessa Holloway either hadn't checked county records, or she had and believed nobody else ever would. That possibility sat with me longer than the fines did. My phone buzzed across the table. Miles Granger. "You opened the letter yet?" he asked immediately. "About 30 seconds ago. How bad?" "She fined me for using my own bridge." Silence, then a quiet exhale on the other end. "That woman really is stupid." "No," I said. "That's the part bothering me." Miles understood immediately. "You think she knows?" "I think people don't usually build checkpoints on property they haven't verified." He went quiet for a second. "Well," he finally said, "either way, don't respond yet. She threatened police involvement this morning." "Good." I almost laughed. "Good?" "Wade, the first person to escalate loses flexibility. Let her keep putting things in writing." I looked back down at the violation notice. Every sentence on the page assumed legal authority over parcel 8823. Every signature strengthened my position. Miles continued. "You still have the county plat copies?" "Right here. And the recorded deed?" "Locked, safe." "Good. Don't wave them around yet." Outside, wind rattled the porch screen. I watched dust move along the cattle road leading toward the bridge. "What if she escalates?" I asked. "She will." Miles sounded absolutely certain. "People like Vanessa Holloway mistake silence for surrender. She thinks you're intimidated. She put a sticker on my windshield. That sticker may become Exhibit Say someday. I smiled slightly at that. After we hung up, I poured coffee and carried the mug onto the porch. From there, I could see the distant bridge cutting across Coyote Creek. Tiny from this distance, almost harmless looking. You'd never know a subdivision depended on it completely. An engine rumbled somewhere down the road. Old Ford pickup. The truck slowed near my gate before turning into the drive. The driver climbed out slowly. Gray beard, feed store cap, weathered hands. I recognized him from town, Ray Dunlap. He removed his sunglasses and nodded once toward the ranch. Thought I ought to introduce myself. Wade Mercer. I know who you are. His eyes drifted toward the orange violation sticker, still visible on my windshield. Heard Vanessa found you already. Word travels fast. In this county, faster than weather. He stepped onto the porch and lowered his voice slightly. You know that bridge caused trouble before, right? I didn't answer immediately. Ray studied my face another second. Then he nodded slowly like he'd confirmed something privately. Yeah, he said. Thought maybe you did. He leaned one arm against the porch rail. That woman's been bullying people around Silver Creek Ridge for years. Veterans, retirees, widows. Anybody she thinks won't fight back. How bad? She fined Evelyn Pike $800 over a wheelchair ramp for her husband before he died. Something tightened in my jaw. Ray kept going. Threatened foreclosure on a younger family over a garage workshop last year, too. I looked back toward the bridge again. Anybody ever push back? Not successfully. And Vanessa? Ray gave a dry laugh. Vanessa Holloway thinks that bridge belongs to her kingdom. Kingdom. Interesting word choice. I folded the violation notice once and slid it into the deed folder beside parcel 8823. Then I looked back up at the distant bridge crossing the creek. The first move in a legal fight is almost never loud. Usually it's paperwork. Usually it's evidence. And usually the winner is the person patient enough to let the other side keep talking. Somewhere down near Coyote Creek, sunlight flashed off the aluminum HOA sign still bolted to my railing. I watched it for a long moment. Then I went inside and pulled a fresh binder from the cabinet. On the spine, I wrote 2 words in black marker, Silver Creek, because this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a case. The second certified letter arrived 48 hours later. This one came taped to my front gate, not mailed, taped. The envelope flapped against the wood in the wind, beside a fresh laminated notice that read, Unauthorized property owner. Under HOA Review, Vanessa Holloway had added her own logo beneath it. I stood there looking at the sign for a long second while my cattle shifted behind me in the pasture. That bridge confrontation had lasted maybe 6 minutes. And somehow this woman already believed she could regulate 1,200 acres of ranch land that sat completely outside her subdivision boundaries. I photographed the envelope before touching it. Then the notice. Then the zip ties holding it to my gate. Evidence first. Always. Inside the envelope sat another violation notice, this one longer and uglier than the first. The HOA now demanded repainting my front gate from matte black to approved cedar brown, removal of the hay barn visible from Silver Creek Ridge's eastern cul-de-sac, registration numbers for all ranch vehicles, proof of liability insurance for community road usage. At the bottom sat a handwritten addition in blue ink. Failure to comply may result in civil action or access restrictions. Signed, Vanessa Holloway. I folded the paper carefully and slid it into the Silver Creek binder. Then I noticed something else. Tire tracks. Fresh. Somebody had driven through my side pasture during the night. I followed the tracks along the fence line in my truck until they curved back toward Coyote Creek, toward the bridge. The tracks stopped near the creek bank beside a cluster of cottonwoods overlooking parcel 8823. Beer cans, cigarette butts, fresh boot prints, and another HOA sign lying face down in the dirt waiting to be installed. Authorized community property. No trespassing. I stared at it quietly. That was when I understood the real problem. Vanessa wasn't bluffing anymore. She was expanding, claiming territory, the same way aggressive developers did before lawsuits started. I took photographs from every angle. Then I loaded the sign into my truck bed and drove into town. The feed store went quiet when I walked in, carrying an HOA warning sign under one arm. Ray Dunlap nearly choked on his coffee. "Well," he muttered, "guess she started annexing Wyoming now." A few older ranchers laughed under their breath. Not loudly. Nobody in town laughed loudly about Vanessa Holloway. I leaned the sign against the counter. "You recognize this?" Ray squinted at it. "New design. She left it on my property. Your bridge property, Creek Bank." That changed the room slightly. The men near the seed aisle stopped, pretending not to listen. Ray lowered his voice. "You still haven't told her?" "No." "Why?" I looked toward the window where my truck sat outside with the orange sticker still attached to the windshield. "Because she keeps putting things in writing." Ray stared at me another second, then slowly nodded. "Damn," he said quietly. "You really are gonna bury her." Before I could answer, the feed store owner stepped from the back office, carrying another envelope. "Certified came here looking for you yesterday," he said. "Figured you'd show eventually." Another one. This envelope carried the letterhead of Silver Creek Ridge HOA Legal Compliance Division. Legal Compliance Division. Like they were the federal government. I opened it, standing right there beside the cattle feed display. The letter inside informed me that Silver Creek Ridge HOA had officially implemented temporary access permits for all non-resident commercial traffic crossing community infrastructure. Fee, $75 per crossing. Failure to register would result towing authorization requests submitted to the county sheriff. Ray read over my shoulder, then barked a short laugh. "She's charging tolls on your own bridge now. Looks that way." One of the older ranchers near the coffee station spoke up quietly. "Woman did something similar to Evelyn Pike." I turned toward him. "She's the widow?" He nodded. "Fined her over a wheelchair ramp after her husband's stroke. Said it violated aesthetic standards." Another man joined in. "She threatened foreclosure on Travis Boone, too. Kid built a mechanic shed behind his house. HOA called it unauthorized commercial construction." The first rancher shook his head. "Travis tore it down himself before they could lien the property." Nobody spoke for a second after that. I folded the letter carefully. "Anybody ever fight her in court?" Ray answered immediately. "Nope." "Why not?" "Because most folks around Silver Creek Ridge aren't rich enough to survive a legal war." That sat heavy for a moment, because that was how HOAs like Vanessa's really operated. Not through law, through exhaustion, threats, paperwork, fear. They counted on people folding before discovery ever started. I drove home before sunset, with 3 new violation letters in the binder and Vanessa's abandoned HOA sign rattling in the truck bed. Halfway up the ranch road, I noticed movement near the bridge. SUV, black Lexus, Vanessa. She stood beside the railing talking to 2 men in Navy HOA jackets. Even from that distance, I could tell she was angry. One of the men pointed toward my ranch. Probably my gate. Probably the missing sign. I stopped the truck near the cattle fence and watched them through binoculars from the dashboard compartment. Vanessa pointed directly toward the parcel marker, then toward the bridge railing, then toward my house. Planning, calculating. The same expression I'd seen on land developers right before they crossed lines they couldn't uncross. One of the men handed her a clipboard. She signed something. Then all 3 climbed back into their vehicles. As they pulled away, I noticed another detail. A small dome camera mounted beneath the bridge railing, brand new, pointed directly toward my ranch road. I felt my jaw tighten for the first time since this started. They were surveilling access on land they didn't own. I drove down slowly after they left and parked beside the bridge. The camera blinked red beneath the steel beam. Recording, I photographed it. Then photographed the mounting screws drilled directly into the bridge structure. Parcel 8823. My bridge, my railing, my steel. And now Vanessa Holloway had installed surveillance equipment on it without permission. I stood there, listening to the creek water move beneath the concrete span while evening wind rattled the aluminum HOA signs. The bridge suddenly looked different than it had 6 weeks earlier. Not peaceful anymore. Occupied. I pulled my phone out and called Miles Granger. He answered immediately. How bad? She installed cameras. Silence. Then, on the bridge itself? Yes. Did you photograph everything? Already done. Another pause. Then Miles said the sentence that changed the direction of the entire fight. Wade, don't remove a single thing yet. Why? Because if she's willing to trespass this openly, his voice hardened slightly, she's about to make a much bigger mistake. Miles Granger was right. The mistake came 3 days later. I spent those 3 days doing exactly what he told me to do. Nothing. I didn't respond to the letters, didn't remove the camera, didn't touch the HOA signs bolted onto my bridge. I fed cattle, repaired fence line near the north pasture, logged every document into the Silver Creek binder, and photographed every new violation notice Vanessa taped to my gate. By Thursday morning, the binder was thick enough to need dividers. Communications, trespass, false claims, surveillance. The woman was building my case for me faster than I could organize it. That afternoon, I drove into Casper and bought 3 trail cameras from an outdoor supply store near the interstate. Motion activated, infrared night vision. Timestamps burned directly into the footage. I mounted the first one high, inside a cottonwood overlooking the bridge. The second near the cattle gate. The third deeper down the creek bank where anybody approaching the bridge from Silver Creek Ridge would cross onto parcel 8823. Then I waited. Saturday morning, I planted the sign. Simple white wood, black lettering. Private property parcel 8823. No trespassing without owner. Permission, I set it 6 feet back from the bridge approach on my side of the parcel line. Completely legal, completely visible, and impossible for Vanessa Holloway to ignore. By sunset, 3 different Silver Creek Ridge residents had slowed their cars to stare at it while crossing the bridge. By 9 o'clock that night, somebody called the sheriff on me. Deputy Cole Barrett arrived just before dark. Tall, calm, mid-40s. The kind of lawman who looked at paperwork before personalities. He stepped out beside the bridge while gravel crunched beneath his boots. Evening, he said. Deputy. He glanced at the sign. Complaint says you're threatening community access. I posted a property marker. You own this parcel? I handed him a certified copy of the county plat from the truck. Cole Barrett studied it under his flashlight for nearly a full minute. Then his eyes slowly lifted toward the bridge. Well, he muttered quietly. That's interesting. I pointed toward the HOA signs still bolted to the railing. They installed those without permission. And the camera? Also theirs. Cole looked at the steel beam where the red recording light blinked steadily. You planning to remove any of this? Not tonight. That answer seemed to relax him slightly. He handed the documents back. For what it's worth, he said carefully. I'd recommend keeping things civil until ownership gets sorted out. It already is sorted out. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Fair enough. Before leaving, he looked once more toward the subdivision side of the bridge. You're not the first person around here who's had issues with Vanessa Holloway. Then he drove off. The sign survived exactly 21 hours. I checked the trail cameras Sunday morning before coffee. 5 motion alerts, 3 deer, 1 pickup truck crossing at 1:12 a.m. Then the final clip, 3:47 a.m. 2 men walking onto parcel 8823 carrying flashlights. One wore a Silver Creek Ridge HOA jacket. The other carried a wrench. I leaned closer to the screen. Derek Holloway, Vanessa's brother-in-law. The footage showed him kneeling beside my sign while the second man loosened the mounting bolts. Then the camera angle widened slightly as movement appeared near the bridge rail. Vanessa, standing 20 feet away with her arms folded while they tore the sign out of the ground. No hesitation, no uncertainty, like they genuinely believed they owned the land beneath their feet. The men dragged the sign toward the creek bank and tossed it down into the rocks below. Timestamp burned bright across the corner of the footage, 3:45:52 a.m. I watched the clip twice more before copying every file onto 2 separate drives. Then I called Miles. He answered immediately. "You got something, not a question." "Yes." "How good?" "Very." 20 minutes later, he was watching the footage from my kitchen table. He leaned back slowly after the third replay. "Jesus Christ. Good enough? Wade, this isn't just trespass anymore." He pointed toward the screen where Derek's HOA jacket logo flashed clearly beneath the infrared glare. "This is intentional destruction of posted property notice on recorded private land, while the HOA president supervises." I poured coffee while he kept watching. Miles finally looked up. "Call the sheriff." Cole Barrett arrived 40 minutes later. This time, he brought a notebook. And this time, he watched the entire video without interrupting once. The kitchen stayed silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint creek water outside the open window. When the clip ended, Cole rested both hands on the table. "You're certain the sign was inside parcel boundaries?" I slid the county survey across the table. 6 feet inside. He compared the map to the footage carefully. Then he nodded once. "All right. No drama, no speeches, just professional confirmation." He pulled the HOA violation letters from the binder next. The bridge permits, the access restrictions, the surveillance notices. His expression changed slightly with every page. Finally, he looked toward me. "Mr. Mercer, why haven't you pressed charges already?" "Good question." I thought about it for a second before answering, because I wanted to know whether this was confusion or intent. Cole glanced back toward the frozen image of Vanessa standing beside the bridge at 3:45 in the morning. "You know now." Miles folded his arms. "What happens next?" Cole closed the notebook carefully. "What happens next?" he said. "Depends entirely on how aggressive Mrs. Holloway wants to get." Almost on cue, headlights flashed across the kitchen window from the direction of the bridge. Black, Lexus, Vanessa. She stopped directly beside parcel 8823. Then another vehicle pulled in behind her, and another. 3 HOA vehicles sat at the bridge entrance, while morning sunlight climbed slowly over Coyote Creek, watching the ranch, watching my house, watching the bridge they still believed they controlled. Cole Barrett stepped onto the porch beside me and stared toward the vehicles. Then he said something that made the entire situation suddenly feel much larger. "Wade, I don't think they understand how much trouble they're actually in." The 3 HOA vehicles remained parked beside the bridge for another 10 minutes. Nobody got out. Nobody crossed onto the ranch. They just sat there watching my house from the far side of Coyote Creek, while Sheriff Cole Barrett stood beside me on the porch. Finally, Vanessa's Lexus backed away first. The other 2 followed. Cole watched the last SUV disappear down the subdivision road before speaking again. "You planning to press charges?" "Not yet." He gave me a sideways look. "You've got surveillance footage, certified plats, trespass evidence, and illegal property interference." "I know. Most people would already be at the courthouse." I leaned against the porch rail. "Most people aren't trying to figure out whether the whole community's involved or just the board." That answer seemed to matter to him. Cole nodded once slowly. "Fair enough." Before leaving, he handed me a business card with a case number written across the back. "Call me before this escalates further." The problem was, we both knew it would. By Monday morning, the rumors had spread through Silver Creek Ridge. I noticed it first at the feed store. People stopped talking when I walked in. Not hostile, careful, like they were trying to decide whether I was dangerous or useful. Ray Dunlap sat near the coffee station, pretending to read a livestock magazine upside down. "You're famous now," he muttered. "Bad famous? Depends who you ask." He slid a folded paper across the counter. Silver Creek Ridge Community Bulletin. Vanessa had posted an official HOA notice warning residents about an aggressive outside property owner attempting to interfere with lawful community access. Aggressive outside property owner. Interesting phrase, considering she'd been the one standing on my bridge with threat stickers and cameras. I folded the paper once. "She mentioned the trespassing footage?" Ray barked a laugh. "Hell no." The feed store owner stepped from the back office. "You got visitors coming." Turned toward the parking lot. Old silver sedan pulling in slowly. An older woman climbed out carefully, carrying a cardboard file box against her chest. Ray lowered his voice immediately. "That's Evelyn Pike, the widow." She approached me cautiously, like she wasn't entirely sure she should be seen talking to me in public. "Mr. Mercer? Wade's fine." She nodded nervously. "I heard you had trouble with the HOA. Seems that way." Evelyn glanced around the feed store before lowering the box onto the counter. Inside sat folders, receipts, certified letters, photographs, years of paperwork. "She fined me $800 for my husband's wheelchair ramp," Evelyn said quietly. "Said it violated neighborhood sightlines." I opened one folder carefully. The violation notices were real. Late fees, escalation warnings, attorney threats. One letter mentioned foreclosure review proceedings if payment wasn't received within 60 days. My jaw tightened slightly. When was this? 2 years ago, right before Harold passed. Ray stared down into his coffee cup while she spoke. Evelyn continued carefully. "I paid because Harold was sick and I couldn't fight them anymore." That sentence sat heavy in the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just tired. The kind of exhaustion people carried after being bullied long enough. I looked back through the paperwork. Every letter carried Vanessa Holloway's signature. Everyone. "You keep copies of everything?" I asked. "My husband served in Korea," Evelyn said softly. "He always said paperwork outlives lies." I liked her immediately. Another truck pulled into the lot outside before I could answer. Younger man, construction jacket, kid in the passenger seat. Ray sighed quietly. "That'll be Travis Boone." Travis walked in, carrying a coffee thermos and the posture of somebody already irritated before the day started. His son stayed near the door. 12, maybe. Ball cap, quiet eyes. Travis spotted Evelyn's file box immediately. "You talking to Mercer too?" She nodded. Travis gave a dry laugh. "Guess we're all doing this now." He set his thermos down hard enough to slosh coffee across the counter. "She threatened foreclosure over a garage workshop I built with my kid." The boy near the door looked down at the floor immediately. "Ho said it violated commercial zoning restrictions," Travis continued. "Told me if I didn't tear it down myself, they'd file liens." "What'd you do?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Tore it down." Silence again. Travis rubbed the back of his neck. My boy still asks why. That landed harder than the foreclosure threat somehow, because kids remembered humiliation longer than adults did. I looked at the son standing quietly near the soda cooler. "What was the workshop for?" The boy answered before Travis could. "We rebuilt old dirt bikes." Travis swallowed once and looked away. Ray finally spoke. "Vanessa Holloway's been running Silver Creek Ridge like her own damn county for years." "And nobody fought back?" I asked. Evelyn answered this time. "We tried." She opened another folder and slid out a stapled packet with a state seal across the top. "Department of Housing and Community Compliance." I scanned the first paragraph, then the second. Then I slowed down completely. 2 years earlier, the state had formally warned Silver Creek Ridge HOA regarding unauthorized enforcement actions outside subdivision jurisdiction boundaries. The report specifically referenced Improper assertion of access authority over unrecorded adjacent properties. I looked up sharply. You reported them? Evelyn shook her head. Anonymous complaint. Did the HOA disclose this to residents? Travis laughed without humor. No chance. That changed things a lot. Because now this wasn't just arrogance. Vanessa Holloway had already been warned once by the state and kept escalating anyway. I folded the report carefully and slid it back into the folder. You mind if I make copies? Take whatever you need, Evelyn said quietly. Outside, wind rattled the feed store windows while trucks rolled slowly past on the county road. For the first time since the bridge confrontation started, I realized something important. This fight wasn't actually about me anymore. Parcel 8823 was just the crack that exposed everything underneath. The fake fines, the intimidation, the threats, the abuse. Vanessa Holloway hadn't picked a fight with one ranch owner. She'd spent years collecting enemies. Nobody had simply ever stood still long enough to make her answer for it. Travis lifted his thermos and looked toward me carefully. You really own that bridge? Yes. His son's eyes widened slightly. Travis stared another second before shaking his head slowly. Man, he muttered. She really screwed up this time. I didn't answer, because deep down, I was starting to understand something too. The bridge wasn't the weapon, the bridge was bait, and Vanessa Holloway had walked onto it willingly. The emergency HOA email went out 3 days later, at exactly 6:12 a.m. Ray Dunlap forwarded it to me before I'd even poured coffee. Urgent community action meeting mandatory attendance. Recommended below that sat 4 dense paragraphs accusing me of threatening Silver Creek Ridge access rights, interfering with emergency vehicle routes, and attempting to extort the community through hostile land claims. Then came the number, $75,000. Vanessa wanted $75,000 approved immediately for a legal defense fund against me. At the bottom sat the sentence that made me reread the whole email twice. Mr. Wade Mercer has refused all reasonable communication attempts and continues escalating hostility toward Silver Creek Ridge residents. I laughed quietly at that, mostly because the only communication I'd received from Vanessa Holloway involved fake fines, trespass, cameras, and threats. Miles Granger arrived at the ranch before noon carrying a legal pad and 2 fresh folders. He read the HOA email once, then a second time slower. She's panicking. You think so? She just accused you of extortion in writing, without a single demand letter from your side existing anywhere. He tapped the paper. This is emotional now. Emotional people make discovery mistakes. I leaned against the kitchen counter. She's trying to scare the neighborhood. She's trying to keep them scared, Miles corrected. That distinction mattered, because fear was how Vanessa ruled Silver Creek Ridge. Not law. Fear. By late afternoon, another email surfaced, then another. Residents forwarding screenshots. Questions spreading through the subdivision. Some supported Vanessa completely. Others didn't. One message stood out. A retired engineer named Carl Jensen publicly asked whether the HOA had actually verified ownership of the bridge before demanding legal fees from residents. Vanessa shut the community forum down 12 minutes later. That told me everything I needed to know. The meeting was scheduled Wednesday night inside the Silver Creek Ridge clubhouse. 7 o'clock. Thunderstorms rolled in just before dusk. By 6:30, the clubhouse parking lot was overflowing. Luxury SUVs, pickup trucks, golf carts, nearly the entire subdivision had shown up. People weren't there because they cared about me. They were there because $75,000, divided across 90-something homes, suddenly felt personal. I parked near the back beside Ray's truck. The orange HOA violation sticker still sat framed across my windshield. I left it there intentionally. Miles adjusted his tie beside me. You bringing everything? No. Good. He looked toward the crowded clubhouse windows glowing against the storm outside. Tonight isn't about overwhelming them. Tonight's about timing. Inside, the atmosphere felt tight immediately. Too quiet. Too many people pretending not to stare at me. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the clubhouse floor, beneath fake wagon wheel chandeliers and framed photographs of Silver Creek Ridge's original development plans. Vanessa stood near the podium in a cream blazer, speaking quietly with two men I recognized from the bridge checkpoint. Derek Holloway sat near the front, beside the HOA attorney. When Vanessa noticed me enter, her expression changed instantly. Not surprise. I think she expected me to come, but she hadn't expected me to arrive calm. That unsettled her. Ray waved me toward the back row beside Evelyn Pike and Travis Boone. The kid from the feed store sat next to his father again, arms folded tightly across his chest. By 7 on clock, every chair was full. Rain hammered the clubhouse roof hard enough to vibrate the windows. Vanessa stepped to the podium precisely on time. Thank you all for attending this emergency meeting regarding community safety and access concerns. Her voice carried polished confidence. Practiced. The projector behind her lit up with a photograph of my truck crossing the bridge the morning she stopped me. Orange sticker visible. Perfect. She began laying out her version of events. The dangerous ranch owner, the unauthorized claims, the hostile interference with community infrastructure. Every sentence carefully framed to make me sound unstable and unreasonable. Then she introduced the legal fund. Silver Creek Ridge must act decisively to protect our residents' emergency access routes and property rights. A slide appeared behind her. Proposed legal action fund, $75,000 murmurs, rolled through the room immediately. Vanessa raised one hand dramatically. This amount ensures our community can aggressively defend against unlawful claims and intimidation. Aggressively defend. Interesting wording, Carl. Jensen raised his hand near the middle rows. Vanessa ignored him. A woman near the back stood up instead. How do we know he doesn't actually own the bridge? That hit the room harder than I expected. Vanessa recovered quickly. Because this community has used that bridge for over 40 years. That's not what she asked, Carl said calmly. Several heads turned toward him. Vanessa's smile tightened. The HOA legal team has already reviewed the matter thoroughly. The attorney beside her did not look up from his paperwork when she said that. That detail mattered too. Then Vanessa made the mistake. She looked directly toward the back row, toward me. Mr. Mercer, she said loudly enough for the whole room to hear. Since you've decided to attend tonight, perhaps you'd like to explain why you believe you're entitled to threaten an entire community. 90 heads turned toward me at once. The room fell silent except for rain pounding the roof. I stayed seated for 3 full seconds, not reacting, not rushing. People who panic move quickly. People in control don't. Then I stood slowly with the manila envelope in my hand. Not the full binder, just the envelope. Vanessa watched it immediately, and for the first time since this entire thing started, I saw real uncertainty hit her face. Tiny, but unmistakable. I didn't walk toward the podium. I stopped halfway down the aisle instead. Mrs. Holloway, I said calmly. Before this neighborhood votes to spend $75,000 on a lawsuit, I held up the envelope slightly. I think the residents of Silver Creek Ridge deserve to see what's inside this first. The clubhouse went completely still. Even the attorney looked up now. Vanessa's expression froze. What exactly is that supposed to mean? It means, I said quietly, that somebody in this room has been lying about who owns that bridge. Nobody moved. Nobody even coughed. Behind Vanessa, thunder rattled the clubhouse windows hard enough to shake the projector screen. Then the HOA attorney leaned toward her suddenly and whispered something sharp into her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the effect instantly, because Vanessa Holloway's confidence finally cracked. Just slightly, but enough for the entire room to notice. And once a room notices fear, it never unsees it. Vanessa Holloway tried to recover fast. This meeting is not a courtroom, Mr. Mercer. No, I said. It's worse. A few people shifted in their chairs. I kept my voice level. In a courtroom, you'd already have my documents before asking these families for $75,000. The HOA attorney stood halfway. Mr. Mercer, I advise you not to make defamatory statements in front of. Miles Granger rose from the back wall before he could finish. My client is prepared to provide certified county records, recorded plats, state compliance documents, video evidence, and sheriff's report numbers. If your board wants to call that defamatory, we can discuss it under oath. The attorney sat back down. That was the first power shift. I walked to the folding table beside the projector, not the podium. The podium belonged to Vanessa. The evidence belonged to me. I opened the manila envelope and laid out the first document. This is the recorded deed for the Mercer Ranch. Then the second. This is the county parcel map. Then the third. This is the no easement certification from the county recorder. The room leaned forward almost as one body. I tapped the highlighted strip crossing Coyote Creek. Parcel 8823. 120 feet long, 40 feet wide. Bridge structure and both approaches. Carl Jensen stood slowly from the middle row. Are you saying the bridge is not HOA property? No, I said. I'm saying the county records say it has never been HOA property. A sound moved through the room, low and uneasy. Vanessa stepped toward the table. That is misleading. Silver Creek Ridge has used that bridge for over 40 years. Use is not ownership. It establishes community right, not without a recorded easement. And your HOA doesn't have one. Carl looked at the attorney. Is that true? The attorney didn't answer quickly enough. That silence hurt Vanessa more than any accusation could have. I lifted the no easement certification. This document was signed by the county recorder 9 days ago. It states that no easement, license, or right-of-way exists across parcel 8823 in favor of Silver Creek Ridge HOA, its developer, or any related entity. Evelyn Pike covered her mouth with one hand. Travis Boone leaned forward, eyes fixed on Vanessa. Vanessa's face sharpened. This is a hostile attempt to steal access from families. I looked at her. No, Mrs. Holloway. This is me proving you tried to fine me for crossing land I own. I placed the first violation letter beside the deed, then the second, then the access permit notice. The orange sticker photograph went beside them. $500, $1,200, $2,500, $75 per crossing, all charged against a man you had no authority over, for using a bridge you had no rights to regulate. The clubhouse went quiet again. Not confused quiet, understanding quiet. I reached into the envelope and removed the state compliance report Evelyn had given me. But this is the part residents deserve to hear before spending $75,000. Vanessa turned toward the attorney, but he didn't look at her. 2 years ago, I said, the state warned Silver Creek Ridge HOA about unauthorized enforcement outside subdivision jurisdiction. The report specifically mentioned improper assertion of access authority over adjacent unrecorded properties. Carl took 2 steps forward. The board knew. I looked at Vanessa. The board received the warning. A woman near the front stood up. Was this ever disclosed to homeowners? Vanessa said nothing. That silence was worse than a confession. I plugged my laptop into the projector. The screen flickered. Then the trail camera footage filled the wall behind her. 3:45 a.m. Derek Holloway walking onto parcel 8823 in an HOA jacket. Another man kneeling by my private property sign. The wrench. The post coming loose. The sign being dragged toward the creek. Then Vanessa appeared in the background near the railing, arms folded, watching. The room reacted all at once. Not loud, just a hard collective intake of breath. I let the footage play again. Derek lowered his head in the front row. Vanessa didn't move. When the clip ended, I paused on the frame where she stood under the bridge light, clear enough for every person in the room to recognize her. This footage has already been reviewed by Sheriff Cole Barrett. There is an active report number. I have not pressed charges yet. That word landed exactly where I wanted it. Then I pulled out my phone. Miles glanced at me once. He knew what was coming. I pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the clubhouse speaker. Mr. Mercer, this is your final warning. We can fine you until you lose this property. We've done it before. Don't test us. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. The rain had stopped outside, but the room still felt like thunder was trapped inside it. Evelyn Pike started crying silently in the back row. Travis Boone's son stared at Vanessa like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Carl Jensen turned toward the front table. Madam President, he said, voice shaking with anger, how many people have you done this to? Vanessa opened her mouth. The attorney grabbed her wrist and whispered, do not answer. That was when the room truly turned. Not against the HOA, against her. I gathered the documents slowly and slid them back into the envelope. I am not here to close the bridge, I said. I am here to stop being threatened on land I legally own. Then I looked across the room at the residents. And judging from what I've heard this week, I'm not the only one who needed that to happen. For 10 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Carl Jensen stood straighter. I moved for an immediate vote of no confidence in Vanessa Holloway as president of Silver Creek Ridge HOA. Evelyn Pike stood next. Second, then Travis, then Ray, then half the room. Vanessa Holloway looked out at the people she had controlled for 11 years and realized the bridge wasn't the only thing she had lost. She had lost the room. The silence after Carl Jensen's motion felt heavier than the storm outside. Nobody rushed to defend her. That was the part that seemed to hit Vanessa hardest. Not the deed, not the footage, not even the voicemail. It was the absence of support. For years, people in Silver Creek Ridge had lowered their eyes when she spoke. They nodded through meetings, paid fines quietly, apologized for things they never should have apologized for. Now they were staring back at her, and they were angry. Vanessa straightened behind the podium and tried one last time to regain control. This is emotional manipulation, she snapped. Mr. Mercer deliberately ambushed this board with selectively edited materials. Edited? Travis Boone stood up so fast his chair scraped backward across the floor. You threatened to take my house over a damn workshop. Several people murmured immediately. Vanessa pointed toward him. Your structure violated neighborhood compliance standards. My son helped me build that garage. Her mouth tightened. That's irrelevant. No, Travis said quietly. It really isn't. The room shifted again. People were no longer speaking carefully now. An older man near the front row stood. My wife paid $1,400 in landscaping fines while recovering from chemo. Another voice behind him. You fined my daughter over chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Then another. And the Christmas lights. The boat warning. The mailbox citations. The complaints started stacking on top of each other, like floodwater breaking through a weak dam. Vanessa tried to interrupt twice. Nobody let her. The attorney beside her looked physically exhausted. Now one hand pressed against his forehead while residents spoke over one another. Evelyn Pike stood slowly from the back row, clutching one of her old violation letters. My husband was dying, she said softly. That quietness cut through the room harder than shouting would have. You told me the wheelchair ramp embarrassed the neighborhood. Nobody moved. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she held up the letter. I paid because I thought I had no choice. Vanessa finally lost patience. You did have a choice, she snapped. You agreed to community standards when you moved into Silver Creek Ridge. The reaction was immediate. Carl Jensen turned toward her sharply. Community standards don't override state law, and they sure as hell don't let you claim somebody else's bridge, Ray Dunlap added from the back wall. That drew the first actual laugh of the night. Short, sharp, dangerous. Because once fear turns into laughter, Authority collapses fast. Vanessa heard it too. You people have no idea what happens if this access issue goes to court, she said. Emergency services could be impacted. Property values could collapse. I stayed seated this time. Then maybe, I said calmly. The HOA board should verify ownership before threatening lawsuits and toll fees. That landed hard, especially after the documents everybody had just seen. The attorney stood carefully. Given the circumstances, he began cautiously, I would strongly recommend postponing all legal funding votes until independent title review can be completed. Vanessa turned toward him in disbelief. You already reviewed the title. No, he corrected immediately. I reviewed the documents provided by the HOA. That sentence buried her. A woman near the center row actually gasped, because everybody in that room understood what he had just admitted. Vanessa never gave her own attorney the real records. Carl Jensen looked around the clubhouse slowly. I think we need the vote now. Not about the bridge, not about the lawsuit, about her. Paper ballots were passed row by row. Rain still hammered the windows while 90 homeowners filled out votes in near total silence. Vanessa remained standing at the podium the entire time. Arms folded tightly enough to show strain in her shoulders. She didn't look at me once. Derek Holloway left the room halfway through counting. Nobody stopped him. 22 minutes later, Carl carried the final tally to the front table. His expression said everything before he even spoke. By majority vote, he announced carefully, Vanessa Holloway is removed as president of Silver Creek Ridge HOA, effective immediately. No applause, no cheering, just release. Like the entire room had been holding its breath for years. Vanessa stared at him. You can't remove me like this. Carl held up the bylaws. Yes, he said quietly. We can. The attorney stepped beside her. You need to go home. I built this community. No, Evelyn Pike said softly from the back row. You controlled it. Vanessa looked around one last time, searching for support that no longer existed. She found none. Then she grabbed her folder from the podium and walked toward the exit without another word. The room parted for her silently. Even Derek's empty chair remained turned away from the front table. The clubhouse doors slammed behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. And just like that, the woman who had ruled Silver Creek Ridge for 11 years was gone. Nobody spoke for several seconds afterward. Then Carl looked toward me. Mr. Mercer, Wade, he nodded once. Wade, I think this community owes you an apology. I shook my head slightly. No. What this community owes is honesty. Carl glanced down at the deed copies still spread across the table. What happens now? That was the question everyone in the room cared about. The bridge, the access, the possibility that I could legally close the only road connecting Silver Creek Ridge to the county highway. 90 people waited for the answer. I looked around the room carefully before speaking. At Evelyn, at Travis and his son, at the older couples who suddenly looked exhausted instead of afraid. Then I answered honestly. That depends on whether the next board wants to treat me like a neighbor. I paused slightly. Or territory. That sentence stayed in the clubhouse longer than Vanessa had. Nobody answered right away. Carl Jensen looked down at the bylaws still open in his hands, then at the bridge documents spread across the table. We need an interim board tonight, he said, before anything else. The attorney nodded. You do. Within 30 minutes, Silver Creek Ridge had a temporary board seated at the folding table where Vanessa had just lost hers. Carl Jensen as interim president, a retired accountant named Marcia Bell as treasurer, Travis Boone as a voting member. Evelyn Pike declined a position, but agreed to serve as witness for the minutes. That mattered more than she realized. Miles Granger insisted every motion be written down, read aloud, and approved properly. No shortcuts, no revenge, just process. Because process was what Vanessa had abused for years. Now it was going to correct her. The first motion rescinded the $75,000 legal fund request. Unanimous. The second suspended all enforcement actions connected to the bridge, my ranch, parcel 8823, and any alleged community access violations. Unanimous. The third authorized an independent audit of all HOA fines issued during Vanessa's presidency. That one made the room shift. People understood what it meant. Money might come back, records might open. Old fear might turn into paper. Unanimous. Then Carl looked toward me. Wade, what do you want? The room went still again. That question carried everything. I could have asked for tolls, back access fees, damages, a complete ban on HOA signage. I could have shut the bridge until a court ordered otherwise, and based on the documents in front of us, that order might never come. But I looked at the people in the chairs. Not Vanessa, not Derek, not the board that had threatened me. The families, the retirees, the kids who needed school buses, the ambulance route, the delivery trucks, people who had crossed that bridge for 40 years because nobody had ever told them the truth. I want a recorded easement, I said. Carl blinked. Miles didn't. He already knew. Terms? Carl asked. $1 per year. Perpetual access for residents, guests, school transportation, emergency services, mail, and ordinary delivery vehicles. The room reacted quietly. Not cheering, relief, real relief. But Silver Creek Ridge never again modifies. Signs, photographs, monitors, obstructs, paints, drills, blocks, or regulates parcel 8823 without my written consent. Carl nodded immediately. Agreed. And every illegal fine related to bridge access outside properties or fake jurisdiction gets reviewed. Marcia Bell wrote that down. Agreed. Evelyn Pike gets her $800 back. Evelyn looked up sharply. Wade, I said. That happened under HOA letterhead. The HOA fixes it. Her mouth closed, her eyes filled. Travis Boone gets reimbursed for the materials on that workshop. Travis stared at me. That's not your fight. It became my fight when your son had to watch you tear it down. His boy looked at the floor again, but this time not from shame. Carl turned toward Travis. We can vote on reimbursement pending receipts. I have receipts, Travis said quietly. Kept everyone. Good, Carl said. Bring them. Miles opened his folder and slid a draft agreement across the table. He had prepared it before the meeting. I hadn't asked him to. Good attorneys don't wait for victory to start drafting peace. The document was short, clean. Recorded easement across parcel 8823. Access preserved. Ownership acknowledged. HOA authority limited. Costs assigned. Silver Creek Ridge would pay legal preparation, county recording fees, the independent audit deposit, and any removal costs for unapproved equipment already installed on the bridge. The HOA attorney read it twice. Then he exhaled like a man realizing he'd survived a bridge collapse by standing on the right side of it. This is reasonable, he said. Carl looked at him. Reasonable. Generous. That word moved through the room differently than all the others. Generous. Not weak, not foolish. Generous. There's a difference. By 11:18 p.m., the interim board voted to accept the framework. By midnight, the $75,000 lawsuit fund was dead. By 12:20, Miles had signatures on a memorandum of understanding witnessed by Evelyn Pike and notarized by a resident who happened to keep a seal in her purse because Wyoming has people like that. When I finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The parking lot smelled like wet gravel and pine dust. Ray Dunlap followed me out with his hands in his coat pockets. You could have made them crawl, he said. I know. Why didn't you? I looked toward the darkness where the bridge sat beyond the bend. Because I don't want people crawling across my land, Ray. I want them crossing it honestly. He nodded once. That'll preach. The next morning, the real consequences began. Vanessa Holloway sent a 3-line resignation email at 6:04 a.m. Derek Holloway resigned from the board at 6:19. By noon, the HOA attorney sent Miles formal notice withdrawing all claims of prescriptive access or community ownership over parcel 8823. By 4 o'clock, Sheriff Cole Barrett called. State Compliance Office reached out, he said. They're reopening the old file. Because of the warning Vanessa buried? Because of that. The footage and the voicemail. I looked at the orange sticker still framed on my windshield. What happens to her? Paperwork first, Cole said. Consequences after. That sounded right. The best kind of justice rarely arrives loud. It arrives certified. 3 days later, Carl Jensen and Marcia Bell came to the ranch in person. No cameras, no clipboards, no threats. Carl knocked on my door and waited like a neighbor. He handed me a cashier's check covering Miles' initial fees and recording costs. Marcia handed me a written apology from the interim board. Then Carl looked toward the bridge. We'd like permission to remove the HOA signs. I almost smiled. Permission? That one word changed the whole valley. Yes, I said. You have permission. Carl nodded. We'll bring the pieces back to you. They're ugly. They're yours. He was right. Everything bolted to that bridge without permission was mine now. Even the ugly parts. As they walked back to their truck, I realized the fight wasn't finished yet. Not completely. The paperwork still had to be recorded. The audit still had to open. The refunds still had to happen. And Vanessa Holloway still had to pay the price for what she'd done. But for the first time since the orange sticker hit my windshield, the bridge no longer felt occupied. It felt like land again. My land, with a path across it. That was the difference. Not a checkpoint, not a kingdom, a path. The easement paperwork was recorded at the county office the following Tuesday at 9:14 a.m. Miles Granger insisted we do it in person. Carl Jensen came representing Silver Creek Ridge. Marcia Bell carried the interim board resolutions in a leather binder thick enough to finally make the HOA look legitimate for the first time since I'd met them. The county clerk stamped the final page, slid the copies across the counter, and said the sentence Vanessa Holloway should heard 6 weeks earlier. Ownership retained. Access granted by recorded easement. Simple. Legal. Final. No cameras, no threats, no orange stickers. Just paper doing what paper was supposed to do. Outside the courthouse, Carl extended his hand. We should have checked the records before this ever started. Yes, I said. You should have. He nodded once without arguing. That mattered too. The audit findings started surfacing 2 weeks later. The interim board released them to residents publicly. Not quietly, publicly. 37 questionable fines. 9 unsupported legal threats. 4 attempted liens. Multiple enforcement notices issued outside subdivision jurisdiction boundaries. Vanessa Holloway's signature appeared on nearly all of them. Silver Creek Ridge's insurance carrier opened its own investigation after learning HOA property cameras had been installed illegally on private land. That investigation moved faster than anybody expected. By the end of the month, Vanessa received formal notice that the HOA would not indemnify her for any personal legal exposure tied to unauthorized enforcement activity, meaning she was on her own. Sheriff Cole Barrett stopped by the ranch the day that notice became public. He leaned against the fence beside the barn while I checked a water trough. Heard the insurance lawyers finally got involved. They did. Cole whistled quietly. That's usually when people realize the game's actually over. I looked toward the bridge down near Coyote Creek. Workers from Silver Creek Ridge had removed every unauthorized sign, camera, bracket, and mounting screw 3 days earlier. They even patched the drill holes in the steel rail. State office still investigating? I asked. Cole nodded. They interviewed residents all week. Evelyn Pike, too. That tightened something in my chest. How'd she do? Better than Vanessa. Fair answer. A week later, Travis Boone brought his son out to the ranch with a flatbed trailer full of lumber. The interim board had approved reimbursement for rebuilding the workshop. His boy climbed out, carrying a coffee can full of bolts and brackets like treasure. You really own the bridge? He asked me again. Still do. He grinned this time instead of looking nervous. Travis shook his head while unloading plywood. Kid tells everybody at school now. Hope he's charging admission. That earned the first genuine laugh I'd heard from Travis since meeting him. By early spring, Silver Creek Ridge looked different. Not physically, emotionally. People waved now. That sounds small until you've lived somewhere. People spent years looking down at the ground. Evelyn Pike brought a peach pie to the ranch one Saturday afternoon, along with a copy of the reimbursement check the HOA had finally issued her. $800, plus interest. She held the check carefully in both hands, like she still didn't fully believe it existed. I almost threw these papers away last year, she admitted quietly. The violation letters, all of it. I looked at the Silver Creek binder sitting on the kitchen counter. Evidence mattered, especially when people in power counted on exhaustion. You kept them, I said. My husband said paper survives longer than pride. Smart man. Vanessa Holloway disappeared from public meetings entirely. People still saw her Lexus around town occasionally. Post office, gas station, pharmacy. But the stories changed now. Nobody lowered their voice when saying her name anymore. That was probably the biggest punishment of all. Not lawsuits, not investigations, irrelevance. The old HOA signs came back to me exactly like Carl promised. Stacked in the bed of his truck one bright Saturday morning. Authorized vehicles only. Community access restricted. Private HOA roadway. He looked almost embarrassed unloading them beside my barn. Thought they belonged to you now. They do. I kept everyone. Not because I enjoyed trophies. Because I wanted reminders. People forget how quickly authority can become abuse when nobody checks paperwork. A month after the easement recording, Miles stopped by carrying a small brass plaque wrapped in brown paper. What's this? Thought the bridge needed proper signage. I unwrapped it carefully. Parcel 8823 community access granted by recorded easement. Nothing else, no HOA logo, no threats, no warnings, just truth. We mounted it ourselves near the West Bridge post, where Vanessa's first aluminum sign had once been bolted into my railing. The screws fit perfectly into the patched holes. That felt appropriate somehow. The final surprise came from the State Compliance Office. Certified letter. Official findings. Silver Creek Ridge HOA received formal sanctions requiring governance oversight training, mandatory financial review procedures, and full disclosure requirements for all future enforcement actions. Vanessa Holloway personally received notice prohibiting her from serving on any HOA board within the county for 5 years due to documented misconduct involving unauthorized property enforcement. 5 years. Paper again. Quiet. Final. That night I framed 2 things in my office: the brass easement plaque receipt and the original orange violation sticker Vanessa slapped onto my windshield the first morning we met. I hung them side by side above the desk. One represented control. The other represented ownership. There's a difference between those 2 things that some people never learn until a judge, a deed, or a community finally forces them to. This morning I drove down to the bridge before sunrise, with coffee in a thermos and the ranch dog riding shotgun beside me. The creek moved quietly beneath the concrete span. No checkpoints, no folding tables, no cameras. A school bus crossed from the Silver Creek side just as sunlight hit the railings. The driver slowed slightly and lifted 2 fingers from the wheel in greeting. I nodded back. A minute later, an older couple crossed in a pickup hauling fence posts. Then Travis Boone's truck, then a delivery van. Nobody stopped. Nobody argued. People simply crossed the bridge honestly now, the way they should've all along. I stood there a while longer, looking at the brass plaque catching sunlight beside the rail. Parcel 8823 community access granted. By recorded easement, the bridge remained open. Not because the HOA won, not because they bullied somebody into surrender, but because the man who owned it understood something Vanessa Holloway never did. Real power doesn't come from controlling people. It comes from knowing exactly where your land ends. and choosing what kind of neighbor you want to be beyond it.
And honestly, I think that's a real lesson in on this. Most fights in life don't start because of land or money. They start when people stop respecting limits, legal limits, personal limits, and simple human decency. Wade could close that bridge the moment he threw ownership. Legally, he probably had every right to. But in the end, what made it wasn't purchasing a whole neighborhood for one person abuse of power. What made it was putting the truth on paper and making sure everybody finally understood where they stood. That's something a lot of folk learn too late. Quiet people aren't weak, and patience isn't surrender. Sometimes the strongest thing a people can do is stay calm long enough to let facts speak for themselves. If you ever deal with an HOA, bad neighbors, property disputes, or just somebody trying to push past boundaries they have no right to cross, drop a yes down in these comments. I also enjoy hearing where folks are watching from and what story you live through yourself. And if you enjoy this story about range life, land rights, quiet courage, and everyday people standing their ground the right way, make sure you subscribe and stick around. There are plenty more stories waiting down the road.